The 1960s, the time of peace, love, mung beans. There was long hair, free love, hippies. And at the end of the decade, 1969, was that famous Woodstock outdoor festival. But what was Woodstock famous for? Was it Jimi Hendrix playing the Star Spangled Banner and burning his guitar? Was it The Who with their exorbitant fees for a relatively unknown band in the US at that time? Or was it Santana gracing the world stage for the first time? Or was it the Acoustic 360 bass amp? The Acoustic 360, known as the Woody amp, or the Woody Blue for its color blue and being made for Woodstock, is the most insane and intense amp, I think, in the whole Helix library for bass players. But is it really that insane? I'm Twisty, and in this video we're going to go and dive into the controls and unravel the mystery behind the Woody Blue and show that whilst it is an insane amp, it's not that complex when you get down to it. Designed and released in 1967, targeting towards the Woodstock Festival and other outdoor arenas, the Woody Blue, or the Acoustic 360 as it was at the time, came with a 2x15 cabinet, and the unique for its time was that the preamp and the tone controls were in the head, and the 200 watt transistor power amp was in the amp cabinet itself. So they were separated. Unique at its time because at that time, the largest bass amps around were between 30 and 50 watts. The Ampeg B15 was 30 watts. The Fender Bassman was 50 watts. And whilst the Ampeg SVT came out with a 300 watt rating, it didn't come out until later in '69 after the festival, or after the Acoustic 360 was available. Because of that volume capacity and the ability to make the bass sound above the guitars, remembering in the 60s and 70s and even up towards the 80s, PA systems weren't what they were today, so the amps on stage had to have all the volume. So they quickly became popular with its 200 watt power amp with bands like The Who, Led Zeppelin, etc. I'm led to believe Jaco Pastorius also used the Acoustic 360 as one of his preferred amps. Let's have a look at the controls and see if we can demystify it. All right, so this is my Helix Edit. I'm using my Helix LT. I've got a patch which basically has a Rochester comp on it, which is just to keep my signal fairly clean. I've got the amp cab version of the Woody Blue with its 2x15 brute cabinet. I also have a stereo chorus which is turned off for the moment, and I'll use that later on. So most of the controls here are very similar to most of the bass amps. I have a drive, so drive's giving me the input level from the bass into the preamp. I've got the bass control. I've also got a treble control, and I've got those both set to flat at the moment. And the ones that make this different, if I look at Variamp here is the equivalent to the voicing setting on the Ampeg SVT. So it picks a specific frequency that it boosts. 1 is at 65 Hertz, 2 is at 100 Hertz, 3 is 136 Hertz, 4 is 400 Hertz, and 5 is 800 Hertz. The effect is like an overdrive or a fuzz control. And then I've got the bright, which gives it a boost at the 10K level. Standard, I've got a master volume, which is the master volume of the amp, versus the channel volume, which is the volume of the patch within the amp within the preset. So I adjust the preset volume with the channel volume, and I adjust the amp's functional volume with the master volume. Hum, you'll see on a number of other amps. This is replicating a 60 cycle electrical hum that the real amp would have had on it. Again, I don't use that at all, so I've set it to middle between 5 and 7. The tuning fork stuff will come back to at the end. So if I look through this, I've basically set this amp up to be relatively flat. I'm using my active bass, but I've set everything to flat, and I'm using the P pickup only. And so if I listen to this as a flat amp, if you like, the drive's there just to give the volume in. I've got some of the effect on, so it's got a little bit of fuzz to it. And I'm at level 3, I'm bumping it at 136 Hertz. So it's going to sound something like. If I pop the bright on, you'll get that. Quite bright. Now, I went ahead and created a couple of settings based off what ChatGPT thinks rock and soul and slap is. I don't think it's right, but it gives you different tonal differences. So let's see what it came up with. So if I look at the rock, I've bumped the drive a little bit, about mid-range. I've pumped the bass up a lot, and I'm bumping the mids at 800 Hertz. That number 5 is 800 Hertz. I've taken the effect off, so I'm not putting any fuzz on there at all. Treble's about middle. I've put the master volume up, and to adjust for the bass push, I've dropped the volume down. Hum is at 7. And again, I'm not worrying about the tuning fork at the moment. So I play this through, I'm getting this sort of sound. Now if I pop that effect back on, if I put it all the way on, here it's got that little bit of distortion in the back end. Now if I try something a bit more in the realm of a slap sound, which is basically going to give me, drop the bass back. I'm pushing the EQ at 136. The drive's back a little bit. I've pushed much more in the treble side. Because I've dropped everything else off, the channel volume's gone back a bit. I'm leaving the bright off, it's too bright, and the hum's still around middle. As you can see, not a slap player, but you can hear that tonal difference, it's a lot brighter. Now if I pick something a bit closer to the sound that I would normally go with, we're calling that soul, but realistically the bass is just above flat. The variamp, I've set the EQ to push at 400 Hertz. So it's got a bump at 400 Hertz. Again, I'm leaving the effect off. I've backed the treble off a little bit. So again, it's about 3, and I've compensated the basses at 7. So they're around countering each other. You might want to play around with that with yours. Again, hum I've left standard, and bright I've turned off. And so that gives you a bit more of a rounded sound. Now, if you want to make that a little bit fatter, what we can do is put a little bit of that effect on to give it a little bit of drive. I'm not really hearing it, but it's there to make that a little bit fuller. Now let's have a look at the tuning fork. Now the tuning fork's interesting, right? Again, for normal playing, not required. You can see I can get a great tonal shape out of the amp just through the onboard controls. But what the tuning fork's designed to do is it's designed to give you a tonal drone. Now you've got the volume for the tuning fork. And then you've got coarse and fine controls. Now I've done some Googling and some searching, but there's no direct one-for-one relationship to notes. On the Acoustic 360, it's a rotary dial. So as you dial it in, the pitch of the tone changes to match the rotary dial. Now, from what I can hear, if I have it on 1, that's an E. So if I turn the volume up, that should be playing an E. Whoops. Now in theory, if I go to 1.1, I should be going up a semitone. So 1.1 should be F. So if that's E, going up to 1.1, I get an F. Now this is where it doesn't become linear. To go to an F sharp, which is a semitone, I actually have to go to 1.3. And to go up another semitone, I've actually got to go to 1.5. So again, not linear, you have to play around with it to get the notes you like. In theory, if I go back down to 1, 2 is supposed to be a B. Right, so again, you'd expect it to be an F, but it's not, it goes to a B. The next note goes to F sharp, etc. I'll put those up on the screen so you can see what they are based on what I can tell. So from a tuning perspective, you could probably go with the E, tune your E string, and then go from there if you really had to. On a live gig, you probably find it hard to hear that and tune it in, so you're better off with a tuner or your Helix or whatever you're using today to tune with. One of the cool things you can do with it though is you can use it as a background drone to play along to. Now for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to engage the chorus pedal to give that bit more ambient sound. I'm going to have the drone in the background, and I've got it set to E. You can tell I've got it set to E because I've got it at 1 and we just went through that. The fine tuning allows you to again change the pitch of the tone and also to tune in if you're not quite on the right note. And so when you're looking for this ambience type stuff, you're basically looking for this to be happening in the background and sort of play over that drone. So if I play something along the lines of So there you go. Is it useful? I don't know, but you can get around with some cool playing along with that tone in a certain key, and then play around and make, it could help you making sure that you're playing in the right key or off that key and see around the modes. So for a practice thing, maybe, again, as an ambience, I probably wouldn't use it myself, but it's, it's a cool thing. And not as scary as I first thought when I was looking through this thing. So here's the Acoustic 360 with its 2x15 cabinet, which is modeled as the Woody Blue in line 6. Is it the most insane amp you've ever seen for bass players? Or, as we've seen in the controls, it's actually a pretty cool amp and relatively easy to find. Now, admittedly, the tuning fork's pretty fantastic and way out there, but as we described, don't need to use it to make this amp really pump for you. The ability to go from really low, clean lows and pump that bright switch to give you the really bright top end at the 10K mark gives this amp a lot of versatility that I didn't know it had before I started playing around with it. Check it out, see what you think. Give me some comments below if you think it's something you're going to adopt as one of your favorite amps, or whether you're going to stick to the one you use. And which one's that, by the way? If you haven't seen it before, check out this video.